A lawyer calls up a plumber to come out to his house. The plumber takes a look and says, "Okay, I can fix it today, and it will be $800. The lawyer raises an eyebrow and asks, "How long will it take?" The plumber responds, "Well, I need about an hour's round trip to the supply house for a part, and then it should take me about an hour for the repair." The lawyer smirks and says, "2 hours? For $800? That's $400 per hour. I'm a lawyer and my hourly rate is $350 per hour." The plumber nods and says, "Yes, sir, I understand. Why do you think I gave up my law practice?" Two new friends are robbing a house. One of them is upstairs, and after dropping a big lamp, he hears the home's owner get up to investigate the noise. As he gets close, the robber goes, "Meow," imitating a cat. Then he hears the guy grumbling, "God damn it, stupid cat," and go back to bed. When he meets his accomplice downstairs, who asks him what that noise was, he said, "Dude, we almost got caught because I dropped a lamp and the guy woke up. Fortunately, I made him believe it was the cat." So after a few minutes, the other robber then goes upstairs to continue checking for valuables. But he knocks over a bookshelf that crashes to the ground. He panics when he hears the homeowner getting up to investigate, so he hides in the closet. The owner enters the room and yells, "Who's there?" So the new friend in the closet answers, It's the cat." A man goes to his friend's house and knocks on the door. The wife responded and only had a towel on her. The man looks at her and says, "Is your husband here?" She said, "Yes, he's taking a bath." The man, "I'll give you $100 if you drop the towel." Wife, "You are crazy. I would never do that." The man, "I'll give you $250 if you drop it." Wife, "I told you no. What do you want?" The man, "Okay, $500. The wife thinks and says, "Okay, but fast." No. She drops the towel and the man gives her the $500 and tells her, "Thank you. Tell your husband I'll be back later." The wife walks in and the husband asks who it was. Wife, "It was John looking for you, but he says he's coming later." Husband, "Oh, did he give you the $500 that he owes me?" A man goes home after being at his mistress's house. However, he realized that he smelled like her perfume. So then he goes to the nearby bar, drinks a couple of glasses of whiskey, and heads home. His wife met him at the door, smelled him, and told him, "You dirty pig, you can pour a gallon of perfume over yourself, and I'll know that you've been drinking." A guy goes with his girlfriend to stay at her parents' house for the holidays. The couple live in the city, and the parents live on a farm. The boyfriend is unused to the quiet country life, and after a couple of days, he's pretty bored. His girlfriend's father comes in and says, "Hey, young fella, if you're looking for something to do, why not take the dogs out for a bit of hunting? There's a shotgun behind the laundry door." Guy comes back a couple of hours later, and the father says, "How was it?" "That was amazing. Have you got any more dogs?" A farmer drove over to his neighbor's house and knocked on the door. A boy about 9 opened the door. "Is your mom or dad home?" the farmer asked the boy. "No, they went into town." The boy replied, "Well, how about your brother Howard?" The farmer asked. "No, he went with mom and dad." The boy said, "Nah." The farmer stood there for a minute, shifting from one foot to another and mumbling when the boy says, "I know where the tools are if you need to borrow one, or I could give my dad a message for you." "Well," the farmer said uncomfortably, "I wanted to talk to your dad about your brother Howard getting my daughter pregnant." The boy thought for a moment, then said, "You'll have to talk to my dad about that. I know he charges $500 for the bulls and $150 for the pigs, but I have no idea how much he charges for Howard." A 17-year-old boy who works part-time at Pizza Hut drives up to park in front of the house in a beautiful Porsche. Naturally, his parents know that there's no way he earned enough with his after-school job to buy such a car. "Where did you get that car?" his mom and dad screamed in shock. "I bought it today," replied the teen calmly. "With what money, young man?" his mom demands. "We know how much a Porsche costs, and you cannot afford it." "Well, it's used and I got a good deal," says the boy. "This one cost me $20. Who on earth would sell a car like that for $20? "The woman up the street," the boy replies. "I don't know her name, she just moved in. She ordered a pizza, and when I delivered it to her, she asked me if I wanted to buy a Porsche for $20. The boy's dad and mom hurry over to their new neighbor's house, ready to demand an explanation. Curiously, their new neighbor is calmly planting flowers in her front yard. "I'm the father of the kid you just sold a sports car to for $20. The dad says, "I need an explanation from you." "Well," the woman says, not looking up from her garden, "this morning I got a phone call from my husband. I thought he was on a business trip in Florida, but it seems he has run off to Hawaii with his secretary and doesn't intend to come back." "What on earth does that have to do with selling our son a Porsche for $20? The boy's mom asks, utterly perplexed. The new neighbor smiles very big and pauses for a minute. "Well, my husband asked me to sell his new Porsche and send him the money. So I did." A guy spots a sign outside a house that reads, "Talking dog for sale." Intrigued, he walks in. "So what have you done with your life?" he asks the dog. "I've led a very full life," says the dog. "I lived in the Alps rescuing avalanche victims. Then I served my country in Iraq. And now I spend my days reading to the residents of a retirement home." The guy is flabbergasted. He asks the dog's owner, "Why on earth would you want to get rid of an incredible dog like that?" The owner says, "Because he's a liar. He never did any of that." A beautiful woman went up to the bar in a quiet, rural pub. She gestured alluringly to the bartender, who approached her immediately. The woman seductively sighed that he should bring his face closer to hers. As he did, she gently caressed his full beard. "Are you the manager?" she asked, softly stroking his face with both hands. "Actually, no," he replied. "Can you get him for me? I need to speak to him," she said, running her hands beyond his beard and into his hair. "I'm afraid I can't," breathed the bartender. "Is there anything I can do?" "Yes, I need for you to give him a message," she continued, running her forefinger across the bartender's lip, slyly popping a couple of her fingers into his mouth and allowing him to suck them gently. "What should I tell him?" the flustered bartender managed to stammer. "Tell him," she whispered, "there's no toilet paper, hand soap, or paper towels in the ladies' room." In their small village, a couple was famous for the husband being 102 years old and his wife being 98 years old, and both were in terrific condition, working their farm every day and having the bodies of much younger people. One day, a visitor to the village, curious about the couple, approached the old man at his farm. The old man was cutting wood without a shirt on, sweat glistening on a body that seemed to belong to a man half his age. The visitor introduced himself and asked the old man, "I hear you are 102. "That's correct," said the old man with a smile. "Wow, I must say you look in amazing shape." "Thank you," said the old man humbly. "Do you mind if I ask, how am I this healthy at my age?" finished the old man. "Help me carry this wood back home and I'll tell you." The visitor agrees and they make their way inside. "You see," said the old man, "I've been married for 75 years. Now, when we got married, I made a little arrangement with the wife. Every time we have an argument, the loser of said argument must run for 5 kilometers. Seeing as we have a pretty typical marriage, I've been running 5 kilometers almost every day for 75 years. That's why I'm in the great shape I am." "But if that's the case," said the puzzled visitor, "how come your wife is in such great shape too?" "Well," smiled the old man, "she usually runs after me to make sure I finish the whole 5. A nun, Sister Sarah, wakes up one morning feeling great. She gets out of bed and decides to go to the kitchen for some breakfast. On her way over there, she runs into Sister Jane, and she says, 'Hi, Sister Jane.' To which Sister Jane answers, 'I see you got off on the wrong side of the bed this morning, sister.'" Puzzled, Sister Sarah did not understand what Sister Jane meant by that, so she ignored it and went on. She's passing by the garden when she runs into Sister Roberta and says, "Good morning, Sister Roberta. Hope you're having a great day." Sister Roberta answers, "Good morning, Sister Sarah. I see you got off on the wrong side of the bed today." Sarah was now really anxious to know why everybody she meets keeps saying that when she feels so great. And so she decides to go and see Mother Superior, who is in her office. She enters and asks Mother Superior, "Holy Mother, everybody keeps telling me that I got off on the wrong side of the bed, but I feel great." The Mother Superior replies, "That's because you have Brother John's shoes on." On the last day of kindergarten, all the children brought presents for their teacher. The florist's son handed the teacher a gift. She shook it, held it up, and said, "I bet I know what it is. It's some flowers." "That's right," shouted the little boy. Then the candy store owner's daughter handed the teacher a gift. She held it up, shook it, and said, "I bet I know what it is. It's a box of candy." "That's right," shouted the little girl. The next gift was from the liquor store owner's son, little Johnny. The teacher held it up and saw that it was leaking. She touched a drop with her finger and tasted it. "Is it wine?" she asked. "No," said little Johnny. The teacher touched another drop to her tongue. "Is it juice?" she asked. "No," he answered. Finally, the teacher said, "I give up. What is it?" "A puppy." Two college students accidentally missed the math final exam. The next day, they both went to plead with their professor. He was feeling pretty good that day, so he allowed them to retake it. He told them to both come back tomorrow for an oral exam. When they both showed up, he told one of them to wait outside while he tests the other. So one enters, and the other puts his ear to the door to listen. The professor begins asking the question, "You are riding in a train car and you get too hot. What do you do?" The student replies, "I open the window." "Okay. Now that window is 2 feet wide and 3 feet high. The train is traveling 50 miles per hour going north, and the wind is blowing at 15 miles per hour due east. How long will it take for new air to replace the old air in the car?" The student is clearly confused at this difficult question and just answers, "I don't know." So the professor gives him an F, dismisses him, and calls in his friend. He begins asking his friend, "You are riding in a train car and it gets too hot. What do you do?" He says, "I will take my jacket off." "Okay, but it's still too hot. What do you do?" "I take my shirt off." "I understand, but it's very, very hot. I will just get naked." "Okay, but there are people in the car who will see you get naked." "With all respect, professor," said the student, "I don't care if my grandmother and my priest are there. There's no way I'm opening that darn window." A widower on his retirement purchased a house situated near a high school. He spent the first few weeks of his retirement in peace. Then the new school year began. One afternoon early into the first semester, 3 young boys came down the street, beating merrily on every bin they passed. They did this the following day, and the days after that, for a week, until the man decided it was time to take some action. The next afternoon, he walked out to meet the boys as they banged their way down the street. Stopping them, he said, "You kids are a lot of fun. In fact, I used to do the same thing when I was your age. Would you do me a favor? I would give you each $1 if you promised to come around and do your thing." The boys were more than happy to accept this and continued to bang the bins. After a few days, the man came out to meet them with a sad smile and said, "This recession really is putting a dent in my income. From now on, I will pay you each 50 cents to continue." The boys were unimpressed by this, but continued to do the same afternoon activities. A few days later, the man approached them again and said, "Look, the recession has again reduced my income. So from now on, I'm afraid I can only pay you 25 cents each." The leader then exclaims angrily, "That's it? If you really think we are going to waste our time banging the bins for 25 cents each, you must be a fool. No way that's going to happen. We quit." The man then enjoyed peace and serenity for the rest of his days. One November afternoon when my daughter was in kindergarten, I picked her up after school. She bobbed out to the car and crawled into the back seat. "What did you do today?" I asked. She couldn't wait to tell me. "We learned that boys are different from girls," she chirped. Looking into the rearview mirror, I could just see the top of her head. "My teacher told us that boys have a thing and girls don't," she added. "Well, yes, they do," I said cautiously. I couldn't think of anything else to say, so we were quiet for a moment. Then she piped up again. "That's how girls know that boys are boys," she said. "They see that thing that hangs down and they know that he is a boy." I mentally calculated the distance home. Our 5-minute commute already felt like an hour. "Did you know that when the boys see a girl, they puff up?" she asked. My palms were beginning to sweat. Uh, well, I was still searching for something new to say, to change the subject when she asked, "Why do the girls like the boys to have those things?" Well, I didn't know what to say. I mean, what woman hasn't asked herself that question at least once? Oh, well, I stammered. She didn't wait for my answer. She had her own. It's 'cause it moves when they walk, and then the girls see that. And that's when they know they are boys, and that's when they like them. Then the boy sees the girl and he puffs up. And then the girl knows he likes her too. And then they get married, and then they get cooked. That last part confused me a bit, but on the whole, I thought she had a pretty good grasp on things. As soon as we got home and I pulled into the garage, she hopped out of the car, fishing something out of her school bag. I drew a picture, she said. Do you want to see? I wasn't sure I did, but I looked at it anyway. I had to sit down. There, all puffed up, so to speak, looking mighty attractive for the ladies, was a crayon drawing of a great big tom turkey. His snood, the thing that hangs down over his beak, the thing that female turkeys find so irresistible, was magnificent. His tail feathers were standing tall and proud. She was a little offended that I laughed so hard at her drawing, and I laughed until I cried. But when I told her I loved it, and I did, she got over her pique. That was the end of that, for her anyway. But I'm not so lucky. Every year I remember that conversation, and to be honest, I haven't looked at a turkey or a man the same way since. A little 12-year-old girl was walking home when a big man on a black motorcycle pulled up beside her. After following along for a while, the rider turns to her and asks, "Hey there, little girl," and winks. "Do you want to go for a ride?" "No," says the little girl as she keeps on walking. The motorcyclist again pulls up beside her and asks, "Come on now. I will give you $10 if you hop on the back." "No," says the little girl again as she hurries down the street. The motorcyclist pulls up beside the little girl again and says, "Okay, last offer. I'll give you $20 and a big bag of candy if you just hop on the back of my bike." Finally, the little girl stops and turns towards him and says, pointedly, "Look, Dad, you're the one who bought the Honda instead of the Harley. You ride it." Three youngsters were in the midst of a spirited debate to determine who had the swiftest dad. "My dad is the fastest," Anya exclaimed excitedly. "He's a builder and can chuck a brick off the 5th floor, race down the stairs, and catch it before it even hits the ground." "That's nothing," Brad boasted. "My dad is much faster. He's a professional archer and can target an arrow at a wolf's head, fire it, and then run and grab the creature before the arrow even lands." "Incredible!" exclaimed Tommy. "But I think my father is way faster." "What makes you say that?" asked Anya and Brad curiously. "My father has been working at the DMV for 20 years, Tommy answered. "He's expected to be off work at 5 p.m., but he's so speedy he's home by 1. A father, mother, and child went out to spend time on the beach on a hot summer's day. But as soon as they reached the beach, they discovered that there was a black flag there, a sign not to enter the water. The boy really wanted to get in the water, but his mother did not agree, and they stayed on the beach to rest in the sun and play in the sand. After a few minutes, the father got bored and turned to his wife. "Keep an eye on the boy. I'm going into the water. There's no way the sea is really that dangerous." After a few minutes, the boy asked, "Mom, why did you let Dad get in the water and not me?" "Because you and Father are two different people, and there are things he can do, and you can't," answered the mother. "Is it because Dad knows how to swim really well?" continued the boy. "Not really," answered the mother. "Is it because Dad is big and strong?" "No." "Then why is Daddy allowed to enter the water and I'm not?" the boy complained. "Because Daddy has life insurance." A blonde gets a job as a physical education teacher of 14-year-olds. On her first day, she comes to watch the kids playing soccer. She watches as they all get together and starts playing. However, she quickly notices a boy at the end of the field standing alone, while all the other kids are running around having fun. She takes pity on him and decides to speak to him. "You okay?" she says kindly. "Yes," he says. "You can go and play with the other kids you know," she says encouragingly. "It's best I stay here," he says. "Why's that, sweetie?" asks the compassionate teacher. The boy gives her a weird look and says, "Because I'm the goalie." Tea was a regular day at first grade, and the teacher asked all the students to tell her something about what their parents do for a living. Some kids knew and gave a good description, while others didn't really understand their parents' jobs and gave vague descriptions or none at all. When the Hoyt studied scenery and when they got to little Johnny, he stood up and said, "My dad cuts people in half." "Oh, really?" asked the teacher with a smile. "You mean he's a magician?" "I don't know," said Johnny. "A surgeon, maybe?" asked the teacher. "I don't know," repeated Johnny. "Then why do you think he cuts people in half?" asked the confused teacher. "Because I have 2 half-brothers and 3 half-sisters." As Mrs. Jones went to the market, she realized upon arriving that she had lost her purse somewhere along the way. Feeling very upset, she started to walk back, in the scant hope that it will still be where she dropped it. However, after 2 minutes, a boy comes running at her, holding her purse in his hands. "Is this yours, lady?" He cries at her. "Yes, it is," she cried in joy. She was so happy she hugged the boy and opened the purse to see everything was there. Looking in her purse, she commented, "That's funny. When I lost my bag, there was a $20 note in it. Now there are $21 coins." The boy replied, "Well, the last time I found a lady's purse, she didn't have any change for a reward." A little girl wants to take her dog for a walk, so she asks her mother whether she can take Lulu for a walk around the block. Her mother says, "No, sweetie, Lulu is in heat." "What does that mean?" asked the girl. "Why don't you go and ask your dad in the garage?" says the busy mother. So the girl goes to her father in the garage and asks, "I want to take Lulu for a walk, but Mom says she's in heat and to ask you about it." The father takes a rag, pours some petrol on it, and then rubs Lulu's backside with it to disguise the scent. "Now you can take her for a walk," he says. "Just don't let her off the leash and she'll be fine." So the little girl skips happily away with Lula trotting along beside her. A few minutes later, she returns with an empty leash and no Lulu. Concerned, her dad asked, "Where's Lulu, sweetie?" "She ran out of gas halfway around the block," the girl replied. "So the neighbor's dog is giving her a push home." A stockbroker walks past a kid selling lemonade. "Hey, mister, you want some lemonade?" a little girl calls to him. The stockbroker is just getting out of his brand new BMW in a nice tailored suit. He was about to walk past when he had double take at the sign that says, "Lemonade $50. "Your sign is wrong, kid. I think you mean 50 cents. The little girl shakes her head. "Nope, $50, mister. I need the money for space camp." The stockbroker paused for a minute because he appreciates a good hustle. But clearly this kid is going about it the wrong way. "Look, sweetie, I know you're trying to make money, but you have to charge what people are willing to pay. No one is going to pay that much for a tiny cup of lemonade. Now, what do you think is a fair price?" The little girl beams and says, "$50, mister?" The stockbroker gives a little sigh and shakes his head. "Okay, I'm going to pass. You see? You can't make a profit when no one pay your price. Now, do you have anything else for sale?" "Homemade brownies, 50 cents." The stockbroker winces in frustration. "Okay, look. I studied economics at Harvard and I got my MBA from Wharton, so I'm going to teach you a little about business, okay? Now, each of your little cups of lemonade probably costs you about 50 cents, including the margin cost of your stand." He takes out $1. "I'll pay you 10 times that much because I want to help you understand about markup." The little girl shakes her head and smiles. "No thanks, mister. $50, please." "You know what? I give up. Take this dollar and I'm going to buy 2 of your brownies. I know you're losing money on them, and I'm not going to buy a single cup of your overpriced lemonade. I'm trying to be nice and teach you about business, but I guess this is the only way for you to learn a lesson." "Okay." The girl takes the dollar and puts 10 brownies on a plate. Just to make the point, the stockbroker decides to eat one of the brownies right in front of her. Suddenly, he begins coughing and gagging uncontrollably. "Oh my God, what did you put in these?" She grins happily and says, "It's my special recipe. Eggs, flour, butter, cocoa, sawdust, and goat pellets. This is horrible. I have to get this taste out of my mouth." The little girl takes out a jar full of $50 bills, cocks her head to the side, and says through a beaming grin, "You want some lemonade?" A biology student doing his thesis on wasps is walking down the street when he passes a record store. In the window, he sees a record called "Wasps of the World" and the sounds they make. Intrigued, he walks into the store. He says to the shopkeeper, "I'll have that Wasp record in the window, please. I've been listening to so many wasps, I'll probably be able to know each and every one of them." He smiles smugly as the shopkeeper feigns interest. The student pays and leaves. When he gets home, he puts the record on. Bzzz. It goes, but the man is stumped. He doesn't know what type of wasp this is. He waits for the next track. Bzzz. And again, he can't identify which species of wasp this is. It gets to the fifth track and he breaks down. He can't identify a single wasp, yet he thought he was already an expert on the subject. He calls his professor around to the house to help. When he arrives, he explains to him, "I thought I was an expert by now, but I can't identify a single wasp on this whole record," he says, almost in tears. The old professor ponders for a minute as he looks at the record. "I know what the problem is," he says. "What? What is it?" "You've got it on the B side." The teacher asked the class to use the word fascinate in a sentence. Molly put up her hand and said, "My family went to my granddad's farm, and we all saw his pet sheep. It was fascinating." The teacher said, "That was good, but I wanted you to use the word fascinate, not fascinating." Caroline raised her hand. She said, "My family went to see New York City, and I was fascinated." The teacher sighed and said, "Well, that was good, Caroline, but I wanted you to use the word fascinate." Little Johnny raised his hand. Now the teacher knew he was a bit of a scamp, but she was desperate to finish this lessons, so she finally decided there was no way he could damage the word fascinate. She sighed. "Go ahead, Johnny." Little Johnny smiles. "My Aunt Carolyn has a sweater with 10 buttons, but her breasts are so big she can only fasten 8. The teacher sat down and cried. An 8-year-old girl went to her dad, who was working in the yard. She asked him, "Daddy, what is asterisk X?" The dad was surprised that she would ask such a question, but decides that if she's old enough to ask the question, then she is old enough to get a straight answer. He proceeded to tell her all about the birds and the bees. When he finished explaining, the little girl was looking at him with her mouth hanging open. "Why did you ask this question?" her father asked her. The little girl replied, "Well, Mom told me to tell you that dinner would be ready in just a couple of secs." Teacher asks their class of children to come up with a sentence beginning with I. After a few children come to the front with predictable statements about having a cat or a certain toy, a child steps up and says, "I is," and is immediately interrupted by the teacher. "I am." She side-eyes the teacher, frowns and ignores her teacher, starting again, "I is again." The teacher interrupts her, this time a little more snappily. "It's I am. Use the proper word." And the girl turns to look at her this time, eyelids drooped with exasperation. "Fine," she sighs. "I am." The 9th letter of the alphabet. A woman is riding the bus while trying to breastfeed her baby. The baby, however, isn't interested. After several tries, the mother is quite angry. "Drink the milk or I'll give it all to the man sitting at the back," she says. The baby is still playing around. A few minutes later, she tries again. "Drink the milk or I'll really give it all to the man at the back, and you'll go hungry." The baby continues rejecting her. She tries again, very angry this time. "I'm definitely going to give it all to the man at the back if you don't behave." This goes on a few more times. Suddenly, she hears a voice from the back of the bus. "Lady, will you please make up your mind? I was supposed to get off 5 stops ago." A retired man purchased a home near a high school. He spent the first few weeks of his retirement in peace. Then the new school year began. One afternoon early into the first semester, a group of loud young boys came down his street, beating merrily on every bin they came across. They then did so the following day and the day after that, until finally, the retiree decided it was time to take some action. The next afternoon, he walked out to meet the boys as they banged their way down the street. Stopping them, he said, "You kids are a lot of fun. I used to do the same thing when I was your age. Will you do me a favor? I'll give you each $1 if you'll promise to come around every day and do your thing." The boys were more than happy and continued to bang on the bins every day on their walk home. After a week, the old man walked out and greeted the kids again. However, this time, he didn't have a smile on his face. "This recession is really putting a big dent in my income," he told them. I'm going to have to cut it down to 50C a day to keep you kids banging the bins." The kids were obviously unimpressed, but they accepted the reduction in payment and continued their afternoon activities. A few days later, the man approached them again. "Look," he said, "I haven't received my retirement checks yet, so I'm not going to be able to give you more than 25 CH to bang on the bins. Will that be okay?" "That's it," the drum leader exclaimed. "If you think we're going to waste our time beating these around for 25 CK a day, you're nuts. No way, mister. We quit." And the man enjoyed peace and serenity for the rest of his days. Thanks for watching our jokes. If you enjoyed this video and want more laughs, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell icon to stay updated with our latest jokes. Join our community of joke lovers and never miss a punchline. See you in the next video.